I arrived here in Terre Haute as the music director in 1997. But I actually started much before that because I was a candidate in 1995. And Bruce, I think you were even on the board at that time. And the change that has happened that Pete alluded to is really quite extraordinary. Terre Haute has become something that is so very different from when I first arrived, and I was so proud to have been here while all that was happening. I, at one point, was thinking of letting this position go and cutting back because it was time to retire, or it was getting close to it. And then things happened that made me say, I can't, I just can't. And I've stayed. I somehow fell in love with Terre Haute to the degree that I'm really struggling to end the relationship. I really am. The board has approved having me be the designated guest conductor. I will be the principal guest conducting. And I also am still involved with the centennial celebration that is a part of that. But I just thought it'd be interesting for you to know right off the bat that it's a little hard for me to disengage. And that affected me as I started putting this together. I've done this program, not like I'm doing it today, but I've done it many times. And I was showing Pete, I basically just used a note card. I don't know where it went, but I just used a note card and talked off the top of my head, which I'm prone to do anyway, as many of you know. And so as I started working on this, I thought, this is a good time to give people an understanding going forward when I'm not here about what it takes to do the job that Roger Collier will be taking from me July 1st. So, as I went through conducting, how hard can it be, right? Wave the stick until the music stops and turn around and bow. So, what is conducting? It's not easy to define. I thought maybe what we could do would be to have me do a little conducting for you, and we'll participate. Where'd my notes go? Here we go. So, this is your tune. NBC, can you do that? NBC. Okay, good. Now. NBC. 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 That was it. Okay. So what I did was NBC. That was that one. How about this one? Got to be ready for this one. You have to look up. NBC. What did I do? I told you it was going to be fast, but how did I do that? I gave 2 beats, right? Before I was just doing this, but that one's going to be fast. So I went, and it was clear that that was not go. It was there, right? Right? There are all kinds of ways to be able to do that. So let's do another one. How about, Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O. Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O.
Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O.
Okay, yeah, you got to know which beats are there. Let's do that again. Same thing, just watch. What am I doing? Speeding up, right? Okay.
Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O.
Again.
Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O.
Oh, what did I do? I did.
Oh.
Yes, right. So you can see with my gestures, I don't have to do anything. Now let's try something else.
E-I-E-I-O.
Okay.
Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O.
So you can see with that gesture, I'm telling you who's going to be playing or singing. What else am I showing?
Speed, the tempo, the volume, what else?
Style.
Style.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Articulation.
Absolutely.
All right. Now we get to Brahms. But we're still singing Old MacDonald. This is everybody.
Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O.
Okay? You see, I can show with my face what I want. I'm not doing a whole lot different with my hands, just a little bit, punching a little bit. So participation in doing conducting is not that hard. How about this? See what you can do with Old MacDonald on this.
Old MacDonald had a farm.
Okay, so what I'm doing is, Old MacDonald had a farm. Okay, it's the wrong pattern. I'll explain that in a minute.
Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O.
So basically, I'm doing what should be in 4. Old MacDonald had a farm. And I'm doing in 3. Old MacDonald had a farm. Put your arms out. Do a 4. I'm going to do it your way, so I'm going to do it backwards for me. Okay? Okay, here we go. You could sing. Now let's do it in 3.
Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O.
In 2.
Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O.
Hi, Kirsten. This is my daughter, Kirsten, and her husband, Kyle. Welcome. You missed the participation area.
I know, so much for coming in quietly.
Yeah. So they're in Indianapolis. They're actually in Zionsville, and they. I did not know they were coming, so this is a surprise. That's Pete over there. He's in charge. All right. So that shows you how you can basically with gesture do it. Now, what about this? See if you. Yes.
Can I ask you a question first? Does every conductor have their own set of gestures?
No.
Really?
These are standardized.
Okay.
If you do that, that means please sing or play.
Yeah.
If you do that, that means Bruce has been bad. No, seriously, you point, you gesture in that way, but the patterns are standardized. Staccato would be standardized, if you're doing things like that. All of a person's basic technique is generally the same. What's different is how they use it.
So a
And-
musician would have no problems going orchestra to orchestra?
No.
Okay.
Well, they might if the conductor is like,
Yeah.
and I've seen that, and there are good
That's
conductors who
fine.
do that. There are very fine conductors who do that. I'll give you one if you want to look him up. His name is Yevgeny, Yevgeny Svetlanov. Yevgeny Svetlanov. He's a Russian, and he does this. And sometimes it's down here, and somehow they play. It's not quite that bad, but sometimes it is. So yes, there is a whole repertoire, if you will, of gesture. So here's what we have done. Time patterns, short, long, loud, soft, fast, slow, and I got you on the Brahms, oh McDonald, I got you on that one to use a darker sound, by the way I was having you do. And then when I lightened up, we were lighter. Oops. So people refer to me sometimes as Maestro, M-A-E-S-T-R-O. You're familiar with the term most likely, Maestro. Anybody know what it means literally? Master. Master. And it is used to be leader, you know, or a teacher. That's another way it's sometimes interpreted. But it means master. I tell people when I meet them, and I'm not doing it as much now as I used to, please don't call me maestro. The reason why is because I'm not the master. I am the facilitator of wonderful musicians doing their very best by knowing what they're supposed to do together. Because when musicians walk into a rehearsal, the very first rehearsal, they are supposed to know their part cold by themselves. That's what professional musicians do when they're good. And Sammy's back there grinning like crazy. Because many people don't come in and they get really good at sight reading. But then they keep the rehearsal from being what it's supposed to be, which is learning how to play it all together with one interpretation. In addition to that, I am the coordinator. Sometimes as you're going along, somebody's counting bars, and percussionists have to count lots and lots of bars, and by that I mean simply they rest, they're not playing. And they may have 45, they may have 103 bars that they don't play, and they're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 103 bars. And then they have to come in. Well, after that much time, if they had just a moment of, I wonder what I'm going to eat for coming, oh no, was that 53 or 54?
Oh yeah.
And so, when, you've been there, okay, got it. When it's time for somebody, I actually mark in my score, and you can see some of those up here, and I put them out so you can look at them afterwards if you wish, and talk to me about it. I will write in timpani, 45 bars of rest. And then I'll write in close to that, look at timpani. And then one bar before, I've got an arrow that says timpani cue. And every time anybody has a long period of time out, that's what I try to do. So that I can say, come on in. That's coordinator, facilitator, and coordinator. So let's look at a score. This is the start of the work that I conducted this past week, and that's what it looks like full page. Okay? You see, I write a lot on it, and that's because I study. So I have my tempi that I've done. I have, right there you can see Reiner, 180, Toscanini, that's Zell, you can't quite read it. And then I have my tempi, what I've done there over time. I started studying this in 1983, apparently. I've got 83 there, and I've got N2 here. I've got all the information about what I want the strings to do, what I'm going to tell them about it. I have when I did it and where, although this is not complete. I have notes for myself, so that's very difficult right there. So I thought I'd just kind of orient you a little bit more. This is the top of that same page. You have 2 flutes, 2 oboes, 2 clarinets, 2 bassoons, and then contrabassoon, which is the large bassoon. Those are all the woodwinds that he put in. You read it this way, that way, all together, all at the same time. You have the 4 horns, you have 2 trumpets. Now, what do you think that means? 2 clarinets in B. What does that mean? It means they're not playing in C like the oboes. See, there's a sharp there. That says G major. This is F major. The clarinets are in B flat. We can also have clarinets in A. In fact, Sammy played an A clarinet in the course of this particular one, and I think also in the Shostakovich, if I remember correctly. Yeah, bassoons are in C. Horns, 2 of them are in C, and 2 of them are in F, which means that when you play C, you hear an F. That's what it means. So if it's in F, when you play a C, it's in F. If it's in C, you hear a C. If it's in B flat, and that's B is normally, in German, it's B flat. So when you play a C, you hear a B flat. So as I'm studying the scores, I have to be transposing all of these while I'm listening to everything else. This is the bottom of that same page. So we have 3 trombones, and notice they're in a different clef. They're not in the bass clef, they're not in the treble clef, they're in alto clef. Alto clef is what violas use. Sometimes they'll use tenor clef, and instead of it being on that line, it'll be on that line, the second one down. And you know, there's lots of other things we could talk about with clefs that I won't get into. Now, I look at this, and I immediately go, those are going to be hard to hear. Ba 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 ba, all offbeat. Ba 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 ba, and so forth. And this is going to be ya da ba da da ba 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 da ba ba da da. So that's it. Ba ba. So I have them, and I write this in my part, and I write it in their part. Poco marcato. And then I wrote myself a note, check and see. I was doing it with another set of parts, not my own, one time, and I wanted to check and see if they had the poco marcato. And I want to, that says here, change. And then this is the VCDIV. It means that at each stand, one person is going to play that one, and one person is going to play that one, rather than playing, as they could, both notes at the same time. They're going to be divided. And then that also is poco marcato. So this is how this is all put together. Now, how many of you came to the concert? Can I just see your hands? Okay, a lot of you. So I don't have to explain about the motto, frei aber froh, free but happy. There it is. And what I've done, as I've gone through all of these pages, I have marked there. This is, right, by the way, this is ya-dum, ba-da-da-dum. That's the Schumann theme from Schumann 3, first movement, and it measures 449 to 453. The next page, I've got that marked. So in the flute, there's frei aber froh. Frei aber froh, right there. This is the second thing. There's another one right there, and it just permeates the whole thing. This is a transition, and I go through and I analyze. That's a transitional theme that is in the key of F minor, and it is going to the next theme, which I won't go into. And you see, I write myself notes on Post-it notes. So it says more crescendo articulation in violin 2 and viola. VA stands for viola. Notice that this is half a page, and then you go here across, and you come back down to here and go across. I mark accents, especially when I want to be sure that decrescendos are done. I'll mark them in, even though they may say decrescendo somewhere else, and in this case it doesn't. So this is the flute part coming across. The flutes play A2, 2 together. Then you have 2 bars of rest, and then they come in here separated. And there is, underneath that particular one, it says forte underneath it. So this is all forte here. And then the next thing they have is pianissimo. So I mark and circle that, and I give this so that they know when they come in, everybody else is decrescendoing. They are not there, but they're decrescendoing. And so as I go through, I mark to help me do what I want to do, which is facilitate and coordinate an interpretation. So if you're interested in seeing more of this, I've got this entire score right here. So this is Brahms Symphony No. 3. The 3 pages you've seen are the first 3 pages there, but you can go ahead and look. And so let's say, well, I'll use this. I'm going to start right here. I'm going to sing the first violin part. So that's the second violin part, but they're playing together. So. So this is continuing that thought as it goes along, and you just read it across. It goes by really fast. So in doing each one in a score, you then take that and break it out into a separate part. Here is the first violin part. Same thing I just sang, right? And so forth. And you can see I've made marks, and then other people have come after me, and it wasn't dark enough, and they made it even, because they're playing with it sitting on a stand, and I've made some point about we haven't gotten quite loud enough yet, and so they reach up and go real quickly, and that's what allows them to be able to see it. What in the world are those? You see that right there? That's a down bow. That means the violinist is going to play this way. This is an up bow. You notice, if you're aware, that they all do it together. Well, that's because I went through and bowed every single part of this. See, right there, that's a bowing, that's a bowing, bowing.
David,
Yes?
I've never tried the violin. How do you know when to go down and when to go up?
Because somebody tells you to, or because you want to have a stronger, down bow gives you a stronger sound, up bow will crescendo up, because the bottom of the bow, yeah, here's the tip, here's the frog is the bottom, and that's where you hold it. It's heavier. So if you start out here and go up, it's going to naturally crescendo. So if you don't want a crescendo, you have to work against it.
Oh.
If you want a decrescendo, a down bow works better, because the down bow naturally decrescendos. You can do a crescendo on a down bow, but it's harder. And so what I do is go through, and for instance, right there, there's an up bow, and then I want to break there. There's another up bow, and so it manifests itself in this kind of marking.
Okay, but are you limited by how many notes? I mean, can
You
you
can do 350 notes if you do them very fast on one down bow soft.
Oh, okay.
But you can also do one very loud. It's called a martelé stroke. You go like that. So basically, if you look there, all of those are in one bow. And notice there's no bow marking there. That's because we started here. They started up bow. And that little thing there means it's going to all be up bow. Ba, 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 and then you can tell what I'm trying to sing. And then here you can see those are all up bows and those are all down bows. And I have to know enough about the string instruments to be able to actually do this. Or I ask my concert master or some string savvy person. It used to be, I wasn't very good at this. After a few years of working very hard to learn more about it, and study with great people by watching them on video. You know, I mean, simply, way back when, I would get VCR tapes, and I would watch the Berlin Philharmonic, and I would see how they were bowing Brahms. Yes, sir?
No, that was my question. How did you decide whether did you already know the piece, or how did you come up with that? So yes.
So, and I do that with every piece I conduct, and I conduct over 1,000 pieces. My library of just parts has about 1,100 pieces in it, and each one is about that thick, because each one has a part for every single person in the orchestra. Each one has all the marks on it that look like that. That's a ton of time. That's what our librarian, Nancy Watkins, many of you know Nancy, that's what she does. She takes a clean part and she goes through and she puts those in. Well, she didn't have to do that for this one because I did them all. But, and that was because I wanted to do Brahms 3 really well. It's my last Brahms ever to conduct as artistic director or music director. I may get a guest conducting engagement, do it, but I will never do it when I'm in charge. Yes, sir?
I'm just curious, are there, like, especially some of these more famous pieces, are there standard bowings that
Yes.
everyone kind of knows?
There are, and many of them are very bad. They're the wrong way. They don't do what's necessary. But there are standard bowings. And there's a company that actually allows you to see them, and then there are a lot of places online you can go and see a set of bowings. But I almost never like them. And the reason, not that I don't like some of them are great, but when you go through a whole piece, not everybody's going to interpret it the same way. And so as I have worked through my career, I have decided that it's easier to have my own set of parts and bring those. Doesn't make Nancy happy because we're not building the Terre Haute Symphony's library, but that way I get what I want. And then one other thing just to point out, see that 3 right there? See that 2 right there, that 1 right there, and that 0? 0 means it's open. There is no finger touching. That's the first finger. For violinists, this is the first finger. This is the second, third, fourth. The thumb doesn't count. So, and then you'll notice this right there. I'm saying dotted half equals, what is it, 54 to 56. I write that in so that they know. Here I started out 63 to 66. That's the tempo marking. The tempo is allegro con brio. So the tempo markings are really important. In fact, the one thing that will make a really fine performance really lousy is if the conductor chooses the wrong tempo. So here's that special spot. Ba-dum, bum, ba-da-dum, da-da-da-dum, bum, ba-da. Okay? Let's listen to a particular performance. And I'm hoping this will work. It has been somewhat touchy today. Let's see if it works. Okay, that's basically what we just did, and I didn't go into the second line. All right, now let's listen to another one. Does that sound fast with movement, allegro con brio? No, it doesn't. It sounds da da bum ba da. Here's another one. I'm not sure I did this one. Let me try this. I didn't. This is it. It doesn't have the stormy quality to it. It's still intense, But here's the first one again. Listen to this. Sorry, it's the wrong one. That's why I stopped it quick. Sorry. Stop. There it is. This is the first one I played. Okay. And now one more. What do you hear there? So those were a total of 4 performances. What did you hear? The first one is fast. What about the last one? Very slow. Ba-dum, bum, ba-ba. You know, it's da. It feels like it's in 6. I have an interesting, I think it was 1991, Susan Bunce, our former executive director, called me and said, I would like to see if you'd like to come over and hear our orchestra. I don't know what she had in mind at the time, but she asked me if I would come over, and it was out at the Woods in Aeolian Hall, my first time on St. Mary's campus. And Margaret Hillis was here. Now, Margaret Hillis was a choral conductor for the Chicago Symphony, and she also conducted the Chicago Symphony some of the time. A very well-known person, very smart, and she literally did this. She conducted it in 6. Ya-dum, da-da-da-da. What's that going to sound like for the next hour and a half? We're going to go to sleep, right? It lost the momentum. And that's the way many people did it after Brahms' time. Here's the reason why. Brahms, there was a certain collective, this is how we do things. This is the kind of thing, when I write Allegro con brio, I want you to be moving and fast, right? And then as people got away from his area, it became more romanticized. And they thought, well, let's dwell on it and enjoy the sound. And it got slower and slower and slower. And many people still conduct that way today. Not a whole lot, but there are some who still do that. But around the 20s and 30s and 1920s, 30s, 40s, there were people who got slower and slower. The first piece that the first version that I played is one that just came out recently. And I was unaware of it until I was doing research for this and found out that he's doing it about the same way I'm doing it. This guy is THSO. He's a Scottish chamber orchestra. And I was like, whoa, I got company. That was great. The one that was the slowest, Bernstein in 1980s. Bernstein. Bernstein is known as one of the slowest conductors ever. So that doesn't mean everything is slow, but it means that that's what happens. This is the most important thing a conductor does. He sets the tempo. So those are the 4, THSO, Furtwängler, Karajan, Bernstein, and I kind of half sang what Margaret Hillis did. So I believe that my role is actually connecting what was in the composer's mind and what the emotions were in the composer's mind before she started putting it on paper and trying to express it. Because you see, it's dots and lines and rests. It's just squiggles on a page that represents that. And my job is to do the reverse programming of that, taking what was here and then went down there, and then it comes back to me, goes inside me, in my head, in my heart, and then with the orchestra, we transform those dots and lines on the page back to music that go to ears. In other words, we convert print to sound. And I believe I am, as a conductor, my primary goal as a conductor is to be the composer's advocate and representative. So that I'm trying to help get back to that. Which is why some of you have, I get feedback. And I've had one person say, that was awful. It was just awful. It wasn't my Mozart 30. Well, whoever was saying my Mozart 30, or it could be my Stravinsky Rite of Spring, whoever's saying that has a certain way they prefer it from having heard it before. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not the only way. It doesn't necessarily mean. So double negative. You can do them many ways. However, doing Brahms 3, da, 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 is clearly wrong. Which is why I said in the preface to my remarks in September, come, but please don't listen to any recordings, because I know of no recording that really does this justice. Now I know one. And the name of the conductor is? Ticciati. T-I-C-C-I-A-T-I. All right. So, the other thing that marks my work is something that I've learned by studying Brahms. So this is my dissertation, and my work was on a particular work of Brahms, and the way that it has been performed over time had not had a whole lot of what we call ebb and flow. Ebb and flow in the sense that, and I did some of that with you, where you speed up gradually or slow down gradually, but you do it in a way that makes the music sing. So I could do ya da 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 da, and I can do ya da 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 da. I took a little time at the top, I crescendoed, and it's different. It's very different. A lot of conductors just do da 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 da. They play the notes and rhythms, and that's good enough. I don't subscribe to that approach. So there is this constant tension between me and the members of my orchestra as I move the tempo back and forth. How do they know that I'm changing the tempo? By my gesture. Which means they need to watch. Most conductors don't ask people to watch. They just mark time. And so you can put your head down and look in your part and you can play. Actually, I will tell you something. I've never said this to her, but I have a person in this room who, as much as anybody I've ever worked with, can read my mind. So we did the second movement of Brahms, and I chose to do it in 2 because I wanted a certain flow to it. It's marked in 4. But I didn't want it to sound pulsed on 2 and 4. I wanted to have this flow. And so the very first rehearsal, I looked right at Sammy and I went, and she went, if you listen to most recordings, you're going to hear and we had made 3 phrases out of that. Just little small, backing away, slowing down slightly, then moving ahead. That's really hard for the orchestra. The thing that Roger Collier liked when he came, he said they're so responsive. They follow everything I do. He was blown away. He's done a lot of guest conducting, by the way, and he knows what is normative. And he said they're so responsive. Well, the reason why is because I'm constantly harping on, and unfortunately it gets a little, sometimes just slightly negative. Watch me. Last week, I had to actually call 3 names and say, you have to watch me. Because they were doing that or just not watching, and it creates ensemble issues, right? But this is at the heart of really beautiful music making. Ebb and flow, interpretation and phrasing. So, whoops, I think I skipped. No, that's it. Okay, so that's musical. In America, what is the artistic director's role? Principal conductor, obviously a performing musician. You have to be able to play an instrument to be able to lead. Artistic director, the artistic head of the institution, which means that other things other than just choosing music and conducting it are a part of it. And then a community arts leader, an advocate, ambassador, and teacher. And I have tried to do that last one really, really well here, because I felt like when I arrived it was needed, and I have a great sense of pride in what we as an organization have become and how we have embedded ourselves within the community. What is it, Sammy? 75, we said, free events, free musical events, 75 this past season, all in one season. Isn't that great? And Sammy, we agree on this. We want this to be how we're perceived. And it's taken years and years and years. But now we are seen as being a part of the community, the larger community. That for me has been a primary emphasis and passion. I love this community. I want us to be a part of it. Whoops. So what does the artistic director do? Well, you can read through that. It's not just artistic, it's administrative. In fact, I said this one time, and I then went and actually did a study of my time. I spend 95% of my time being an administrator.
Yeah.
I spend 3% of my time, sometimes a little more, sometimes it might be 4 or 5, studying and getting ready for rehearsals. And I spend 1 to 2% of my time actually conducting in rehearsals and in concerts. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to see that in just a moment. But I designed the performance season, the budgets for all the artistic expenses. Sammy and I work on all of this together, but I do the artistic expenses. I select the guest artists. I am the one who auditions and hires all contracted substitute and guest musicians. That's my responsibility. I produce, direct, conduct, and choreograph the concert. So when you come to a concert like the one that we did with the Eclipse concert, where we had lots of lighting things and video, that's all mine. I did all the work on that, getting a hold of the people to do it, working with Roger. Roger and I worked together, but I did the background work. He came and conducted. Including lighting like at the Christmas concert, that's all designed by me. I don't just say, do something. Because when you do that and say, just do something, it doesn't always turn out well. I can remember when one time I did do that with a particular person, not realizing what I didn't know. And most of the lighting was green for Christmas. What does that do to people's faces?
Yeah.
It was awful. We looked like the Grinch. So I also make sure that the guest artists are paid appropriate. So let's talk about that. This is a part of when I prepare a season and budget for it. I put everything that we're going to do, all the musicians, all the music that we have to buy, what we're going to rent, what we're going to borrow, guest artist costs, Dan Powers, composer in residence, equipment we might need, all of those things go into a spreadsheet. And I have a certain bottom line, and if it's too much, I have to go and cut. So when I do a concert, then I compare what I budgeted with what the actual is. The way we have chosen to do this so that neither Sammy nor I nor any other person who's been in the position of executive director can be accused of somehow having favorites and getting a little extra money. I get my personnel manager to fill out the spreadsheet with all the things. That then comes to me. I go through, and there are always corrections because that's why you have more than one person look at it. There are always corrections. That goes back, it comes back, and then we say, okay, now it goes to, and it will be going to Sammy next, but it goes to a payroll service that does the payroll for us. And then it comes back, and then it goes to Sammy, and she plugs the numbers in on our overall budgeting spreadsheet. But I also keep a separate one for myself so I know how I'm doing. For instance, right now, I am positive almost $3,000 for the things I just mentioned against my budget. And I won't go into why, but I am. So, paid appropriately. And then as the orchestra figurehead, I have to be in relationship with our donors, sponsors, and other community entities. I'm not the only one. The board does it. The staff do it. It's not just Sammy. It's also Nicole King. And there are volunteers who do that. But if I'm not present, that's not good. It's just not good. I can be called artistic director or music director. Those are somewhat interchangeable. Music director tends to be more limited to just working with the orchestra. Artistic director is a little broader. Generally, the conductor is, the person who's artistic director or music director is the conductor in smaller regional orchestras. So here's my job description. Key responsibilities, if you have good eyesight, you can read those. I'm going to just give the job duties and responsibilities. So there's planning, which I described just now. I work very closely with the board of directors. I mean, I'm on the phone, I don't know, what would you say, Barbara? 2-3 times a week? Minimum. And on things that need to be discussed, not just to bother.
And Zoom calls.
And Zoom calls. So I participate in all board teams. We have, what is it, 6 now? Sammy, is it 6 teams? Yeah. I serve as an ex officio member on all those, which means I don't vote, but I'm there and I participate. Board, executive team, then the governance and development team recruits qualified board candidates. I participate in that. Then here's the artistic thing we've sort of also done, but I haven't mentioned yet all artistic contracts. Those are mine to make the terms, to agree to them, and the difficult thing is when we have Disney, Disney's very hard, and they say that you have to do this, and you have to do that, and you have to do, well, I don't say yes, sir, or yes, ma'am. I say, well, wait a minute. You're saying here that if such and such happens, I'm going to owe you $10,000, let's say. I'm not going to agree to that. And I will scratch it and send it, I'll redline it, and send it back to them and say, if you don't like my removing that, come up with some different language, and this is what I need, and I will suggest language. So I spend a lot of time on artistic contracts. That's something that I just transferred to Sammy. Sammy's going to be managing that. So I participate in the collective bargaining agreement, the CBA. I participate in reviewing that and updating it and getting the musician contracts out, that all those, because if people aren't any good and they're in the orchestra, we have to remove them. I hire and fire. Not always fun, but it's my job. I review probationary musicians, all of these kinds of things, marketing, promotion. I am basically available anytime to participate in producing THSA printed materials, the program book, the program season brochure, other materials that go out from our office. I'm involved in those, and many times I'm generating the first draft of the copy, and then we work our way through it with our teams. I also am involved in education. That's probably my most important thing that I do. I participate in the education team, but I also work with things that we do that are educationally oriented. And then you can see personnel management in general, okay? Programming. This is an amazingly complex thing to try to discuss, and it is very hard. I try to balance programming 3 to 5 years ahead. I'm looking to say, okay, we did a Beethoven 3rd Symphony 7 years ago, but we haven't done Beethoven 8. We probably should do Beethoven 8 before we come back to 3. And then I look ahead and I slot it in just as a placeholder in that season. I do the same thing with Schumann, Brahms, Tchaikovsky, Dan Powers' works. I go through and I look at what we have done and what we want to do. And then I say, okay, now, what for this theme, for this season, do we want to promote? And I'll build that around with works that align with that theme. I always have on the season 2 or 3 what I call anchor works. I can remember back in the early 2000s, we were just dead broke. And we were struggling just to make payroll. And I said to the board, our musicians are getting really fed up because we're not programming anything very challenging for them. I said, in fact, Bruce, I think you were there.
I remember that.
Bartok Concerto for Orchestra is what we decided we would do. And we worked and worked and got enough money, and we did Bartok Concerto for Orchestra. That year, we got a lot of new players who wanted to participate, who auditioned to be a part, because you don't get to play that very often. For next season, for the first concert that Roger's doing, we're doing Mahler 1. Mahler 1 is another one that they don't get to play that often because it's a huge orchestra. And so people want to do it. And this past week, we did another one of those, which is the Shostakovich Symphony No. 5. It is not that often played. It's very hard, it's long, and so we had people who wanted to play with us because of that. So it's anchor works for the musicians. Then individual concerts, the guest artists and repertoire, and then all of the budgets. I set it up so that not all the musicians who are going to play in the concert attend each rehearsal. I try to optimize it so that we can do a movement that doesn't have, say, horns and timpani and percussion. We can do that whole rehearsal without that, and then I work on other things unrelated to that one in the other pieces with that group. So it allows us to have fewer people attending a rehearsal. And then, of course, there's always the, what do they call it, engineering, value engineering, yes, value engineering. You have to adjust. With costs, sometimes the guest artists you had planned on aren't available. I had one year, and I'll even, this is not here, it was in a different place, but I started out wanting to work with, the great jazz trumpeter.
Body?
No, not Bodie, the jazz. Marsalis, yeah, Wynton Marsalis. So I was going to work with Wynton Marsalis, and he agreed to it, and then he said, you know, I'm just not going to be able to fit it in. So I went to Doc Severinsen, and Doc Severinsen he said yes, and then he said, well, I'm really not going to be able to do that. So I went to my friend, Phil Smith, who was with the New York Philharmonic at that time. He says, I can't do it. And so finally, I went, all right, we're now in March. We're going to release our season at the end of this month. Huh. By now, the large groups who are really good are going to have their entire schedule. So I called the Canadian Brass. And I got the Canadian Brass. And I got them for cheap because they didn't have anything on that date. And so they, although by the time Chuck got there, Chuck is the tuba player, he was like, David, I don't like you. You're making me play an entire concert for a lot less money than I usually get. And he said that directly to me in front of the entire orchestra. But that's what I did. Okay, and then scholarship, score and parts edition selection. So you're going to see over here, if you come up in front, on the far table, you will see Brahms' First Symphony, Second Movement, his handwriting. And you have to have somebody go through and look at his handwriting and say, this is what he meant. And there are all kinds of issues with that kind of editing, but I could probably find 15, maybe 20 different editions of Brahms' First Symphony. And so you'll see there the one I chose. So how do I prepare? Months ahead, I get the music, I check the library, I do all of that. Sometimes we borrow. We really try to keep our costs down. Determine all the string bowings with either myself, the concertmaster, and the string principals, and get them into the parts far enough out that we can give them at least a month in advance, unless there's some issue, to the musicians. Then I study and prepare my music. I'm creating an interpretation. I determine which musicians need to be at which rehearsals, and then I plan the actual flow of the rehearsals in the spring before the season. So the following May, when we get to May 2nd, when I have my last concert and I'm doing Rachmaninoff's Second Symphony, well, I planned that rehearsal flow last February. So over a year out, I'm planning so that we can then contract the people so they do what we had hoped for. And I prepare a folder information sheet for musicians. This is not something that is routinely done by most people, most conductors. But I work very hard to let them know what is going to be happening, and here's what one of those looks like, front and back, and it goes on to a third page. So it's a lot of extra work, but then people come in, God willing, already having written it into their parts. And I don't have to take extra rehearsal time, which allows us to be able to focus on putting it together, which is what we did this past weekend in such a brilliant way. The orchestra just was so fabulous. I also prepare a stage diagram for every concert. This is the folder information worksheet. That's the top of what I just showed you. That's halfway down. So, you know, measure 46, beat 8 and 9 into 47, holding back slightly. Poco più mosso, you know, moving ahead. Oh, I also do a timeline for communication. So here is our artistic timeline, and it just lists who's going to do what, and it's our way of coordinating between many different people who work together on a particular concert cycle. So for Nicole, I helped by putting that in yellow, and Angela. Some of this is stuff that Sammy manages, but this is mostly artistically oriented. And then here's the stage setup diagram. So I don't know if many of you noticed, but over here, that says Glock. That's the Glockenspiel, which in the Shostakovich went bum, 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 with the harp. And the harp is playing harmonics, if you know what that is. And putting them right next to each other, and I'm here, puts us right there, and they were absolutely perfectly together. It was unbelievable. I've never had that happen in the other times I've conducted, because I've always had the percussionist back there and the harp here, 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 you know, wherever they traditionally go. We like having the harp out here because this wall right here bounces that sound out. That's why we put her there most of the time. But every now and then, she can't hear something that's happening there because we don't have a shell. If any of you has a little bit of money you'd like to give it to ISU for a shell. So you can see the risers that we use, the platform risers. You can see that's a stand, that's a chair. I have 3 stands, my big one, and there's the podium. So I draw this for every single thing. I even put the tiebacks here so that they can, this will not inhibit the sound of the horns here. Now we have a very unusual situation where we have a hornist who is in a wheelchair. And we cannot put him up there because we can't get him up. We don't have a means to do that. If any of you has an idea, and I know I'm talking to some very bright people right now, way we could do that using something like a truck ramp, you know, that we could use to get up. It would have to be wide enough to get the wheelchair. We would like to take the 2 horn players, 4th and 3rd, and the 1st, 2nd, and that's an assistant there, and put them back here and move that back. But we can't do that. The reason why these are up front is because we can't hear the woodwinds, and you wouldn't hear them outside in the hall if we didn't have them forward. That's all blank space at the very back. We've pulled this way forward to try to hear, and even then it's difficult. We also get our percussion equipment, and so we borrowed some from Indiana State. We are gradually acquiring. We got a $5,000 thing, and I've just coordinated purchasing used a drum set, and we've gotten cases for them and so forth. But every single concert we have to find the equipment because we don't have our own hall and we don't own our own equipment. So the week of the concert, this is what I'm doing. You can read through it. Obviously, I'm rehearsing, I'm studying, I'm problem solving last minute issues when people get sick. We had 6 people who, during the course of the week, either got sick or had something else happen, and we had to substitute for them. And then for a couple, we just didn't have them on stage. It's not fun that way. And I work collaboratively with the executive director, the board, staff members of not only the THSO, but also all of the performance venues. So that's part of that. Now, for those of you who know me well, you know that what I'm going to say next. This is the most important part of what I do, period. And the reason why is we do adventure concert for regional fourth graders, and we want them to want to make music, not just listen to it, not just be people who sit and listen to it or say, I love music. We want them to make music. And this is what we do. This is our program. We've kind of honed it down to this. And you can see on the right side what we're trying to do for each of those particular issues. We have them sing, which is musical participation. We have each of the instruments be demonstrated directly, separately from any other instrument. So a violinist stands up and will show the various components of it, and then he or she will play a little short excerpt, and then we have everybody play together a little night music from Mozart's Eine kleine Nachtmusik. You can see, they see on this page, this is the actual page they receive, and it goes home with them, that we put a picture of the orchestra, and then I put on the back, what instrument would you like to play? And I have them make a choice, and then I have them show that to their parents. And I give them, the parents, this to be able to say what we've done. You see, the primary objective, about 4 or 5 paragraphs down, is to encourage children to consider learning to play an instrument and to make music, because this will make their lives remarkably different if they get involved. So this is my biggest passion, and I get to do it again this year, this spring, and I'm really looking forward to it. It will happen in March this year. And if you are interested in seeing it, we would encourage you to come. Check with the office. It's free to everybody, literally. Our sponsors and patrons make it possible. So this is something that we believe is so important that we have been doing this now since I arrived, completely free to a wide number of communities. More and more people are coming from other communities now. That's a little bit of how I'm asking them, that middle picture, which is kind of whited out, how many of you would like to play the oboe? And they raise their hands. And then I say, don't forget that when they bring an oboe, try it. Try the oboe, see if you like it. But if you don't like it, you could try the trumpet. Or you could try, how many of you would like to try another instrument? And they raise their hands, and we get them to make a decision. That's the key. So a conductor must be, and you can just read through there, a passionate music lover, a diplomat, educator, visionary leader, scholar, administrator, human relations specialist, oh my, musicologist, social psychologist. That's probably the thing that when you're working with a bunch of people like athletes who are very, very good at what they do, being a social psychologist is there. And a conductor is an athlete. I mean, it's hard work. All musicians are athletes in a different way maybe than what we think of. But they are athletes, and you can see the rest of that: persuader, collaborator, hearing acuity specialist. I've got to be able to say, you're not hearing as well as you used to hear. We're going to either have to fix it, or we're going to have to find another way to proceed. Encourager, linguist, fundraiser, recruiter, marketing specialist, nurturer, disciplinarian, negotiator. There's a lot of negotiation that takes place in rehearsals. And I like that because that's the collaboration aspect of our particular thing. A budgetary magician, cheerleader, and the composer's advocate. This is what I love kids, I want kids, and I want all people to make music, and I want the composers to have their music played well. Do you have questions? Wait, let's go. Sharon?
This has to do with being the composer's advocate. Let's pretend that you have a recording of Brahms conducting his 3rd symphony.
Okay.
would you feel obliged to recreate the way that he composed it? Or would you say, Johannes, you know, I think you don't know quite what you wrote here, buddy. I've got a better idea than you do.
Well, what I would say is most composers are not good conductors. And the reason why is because they are composers. So John Williams is an unusual man who can conduct really, really well. Richard Strauss was unusual. He conducted really, really well. But Stravinsky, I've got all of Stravinsky's works conducted by Stravinsky, and there's not one that I would say is ultimately compelling. So I would do two things, and I do this. I mean, I do a lot of new music. I don't know, I don't talk about this here because the occasions didn't happen here, but I won 5 national awards for programming. It's from ASCAP. The American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers, and they have given me 5 awards for my programming over many years. And the reason is because I love doing new music. Now, I haven't done as much of it here as I would elsewhere. It's because new music here is not going to be as productive because there's so much great music out there, and we only have 5 concerts in a year. So where I would, if I were in, well, where I was in Carmel, I did a lot more new music. But I did it in a way that fit that community. I didn't program wherever I was. When I was guest conducting, when I was in Spain, I programmed very differently for the Spanish audiences than I program here. So having said that, I've worked with a lot of composers. And I've worked with composers who, they have conducted their work, and I go and I look at it, and you know what I do? I call them. And I talk to them. I wish I could do that with Johannes. And many times, what they almost always say is, oh, I hadn't thought of it that way, but my, that sounds good. Or, I want you to do it the way you feel it. That's what they'll say. Because ultimately it's about feeling, it's connecting the composer to you, the audience. It's not about me, I'm the conduit. And I try to represent it in a way that will connect with my audience. And that even means that I will do things differently in one venue than I will in another, because I know enough about the community to be able to say, that's not going to work here, let's do something else. Thank you. Joan, you had a question.
It's not really a question. I admire you for a lot of reasons, David, but one of your predecessors did not do what you do exquisitely, and what you mentioned in your talk, and that was to engage with the donors, to make them feel a part of the effort, and not only that, be at all the fundraisers, show up and talk to everyone, and bring the audience in by making comments. You do that perfectly, and I love you for that.
Thank you. And she and John speak from personal experience because we've had a number of those, let's go out to eat and talk about this. And you've been great supporters. Other questions? I saw, yes.
Anyone who was here today would say, that sounds like a full-time job, if not more than a full-time job. But at the same time, for many years, you were conducting in Carmel, and you were conducting in Columbus, and I presume you were also teaching. How did you fit all those things?
Well, I wasn't teaching. I stopped teaching. I wasn't teaching at that time, but I was working at a church which had 3 different services, and so I prepared a choir and a children's choir, and I prepared a band, and I led the band. I used to be a garage band member, and then I did another band, all at the same time, and the only way that happened, seriously, is because I have the best spouse ever. She's amazing. So my daughter back there, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
The 2 of you are the only way it happens, because you can only do so much, and your bandwidth increased when she was able to come home.
Yeah, and our kids talk about us, you guys are joined at the hip, don't you ever spend any time apart? And the answer is no, not really. We're just always together. That's special. Yes?
When you started your presentation, you mentioned about the notes you put on the music, tempo and stuff like that, violin, 1, 2, 3. Are those unique to you? Or could another composer take a look at your notes and pinch hit for you for a concert or something?
Generally speaking, we have a secret code, if you will. If you, well, I could show it on here, but just look up here. Let's see, over the top, here's the score, and right here in the middle of the score, there's a little curvy thing. We all know that means take a little bit of time. You're going to just slow down just a little bit. An arrow going that direction, well, it could mean several things, but it's generally going to go faster. An arrow underneath the note means those people always play that flat, and you need to make sure they get it up to pitch. An arrow above it going down, opposite. So there are things like that, and then of course there are the things like writing in poco marcato. They're going to know immediately what marcato is, and that my intention as they read my score. But they're not going to want to do that. Because you know why? They want to be able to mark their own thing the way they want to have it. And when you're looking at that and then marking on top of somebody else's, well, you don't really want to do that. Although I had one assistant conductor who took one of my scores and it came back and it was radically different than when I had it leave. I actually had to prepare another score. I couldn't.
But didn't Roger step in for you? And
Well, he's using his own scores.
Oh.
He's not using my scores. He's got his own scores. He will use my parts sometimes.
With enough time to do the rehearsals and get the symphony?
So when we do things together, he uses his scores, I use my scores.
No, I mean that he substituted for you one time, and I thought it was...
He had his own scores.
Oh, wow.
He had done those works. I mean, I could substitute for practically anybody on any piece except the ones that were written yesterday, because I have a lot of that music. And I study it even if I'm not conducting it. I mean, I have spent a lot of time.
And the symphony and the musicians had enough time to learn Roger's way.
Well, pretty much it was, the thing that was really funny was he was doing Dvorak 8. We don't own Dvorak 8 here. I didn't have it in my library, and I was casting about. And I called him and I said, "Do you have Dvorak 8? He says, "Yeah, I have my own set." I said, "Can I borrow it?" And then he ended up conducting it.
Oh.
Yes?
Do you play every instrument in the orchestra?
Yes and no. So I don't play well every instrument. I am a recovering oboist. I started on clarinet. I played keyboard instruments. I played all of the percussion instruments in ensemble. But I have learned every instrument and how it works and how it's played without getting good at it. But I know enough to be able to engage. And what's interesting is I learn more from my orchestra, I think, than they learn from me. Because I'm always asking them questions about, well, can we do this or this? Well, no, we can't, but we could do that if we did this. We had a piece this past September, the Ravel Piano Concerto, the G major piano concerto, which has a note that isn't on the bassoon.
Oh.
And the first time I did this, the bassoonist told me, well, so the bassoonist has a reed, big reed, and then they have a little pipe that's called the vocal that goes down into. And the person said, well, if you want me to drill a hole in my vocal, I can maybe play it.
Oh my.
That was not somebody who was happy. So, and we worked on it and we looked at the various fingerings that were possible, and I learned from Chad what he thought was the best way to do that. It was great.
Would you be so kind as to run back to the stage diagram that you did?
Okay. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Bruce?
As you are turning pages, I notice sometimes you'll turn several at once. Do you really know the music so that you don't have to look at every page?
So when you come up afterwards, and let me tell you what's here because this is germane. So this is Brahms 3. It also is Brahms 1, 2, and 4. It's an entire collection done by Dover Books. It looks like that. Generally speaking, I don't like carrying around something so big, but this is the score I started with, and all my notes are in here, and I don't want to redo it. So this one. I lost my train of thought. I was too...
About turning pages.
Turning pages. I almost did this piece from memory this time. I'll give you a little inside, really inside baseball. My wife came up to me, I think it was when we were eating between the dress rehearsal and the concert, and she said, I need to know, are you going to do anything tonight from memory? And I said, no, sweetheart, I'm not. She went, when I don't have a score in front of me, and I have done many, many concerts without any music in front of me, she gets so nervous. And she hates it. And so even I have done one, Kirsten, you can tell her I'm not going to. I did one concert where I did the whole concert from memory, but I had all the scores in front of me, and I turned the pages. But I never looked at them. So when I have this, what you're going to look at when you see here, you'll see blue marks and red marks and green marks, and those are all shorthand for me in my score to remind me. So I can glance down and I'm back up. What I have found recently is I'm finding that I kind of like looking down more than I'm looking up, and look up when I need to take care of things, because that way there are things that I see in the music in the moment that I did not mark, but that I'm feeling it, and it corroborates it. And so I'm looking at my scores more often than I used to. But basically, it's a shorthand for just, what I want to remember. But I do love conducting from memory, because then I'm more with musicians. And I tend to close my eyes when I'm doing that too, which is not good. And so there's all of this, I conduct without a baton now. The reason I conduct without a baton now is because I'm more expressive. I'm a person who uses my hands a lot. So, but then there are times that the orchestra says, David, we really need to see a beat there. I'm doing one of these things, and they'll say, well, Sammy this last time said, we have trouble seeing your hands in dress rehearsal when you're wearing black. It's hard to see, and because of the lighting and other things. And so I could have said, okay, I'll use a baton, but I didn't want to. But there are times when I have picked up a baton because it needed to be clearer, more detailed. And I am more detailed this way than less expressive. One more question. Sherry.
You mentioned in your comments before the Brahms that the third movement was so wildly, excitedly received that they had to play it twice. It was interesting to me that at this concert, something happened that often does not happen. Your audience, which often applauds between movements, was absolutely quiet. It was like nobody was even breathing. And I thought that's probably a higher compliment to Brahms than he received when he got that wild ovation that required that he play it again. So my question is, what's happening with regard to applauding between movements? How do you feel about that? I think probably everybody in this room knows that you're not supposed to. That's what we've been told. But then we also know that we've heard that sometimes when pieces were originally performed, there was applause between movements. And that that's happening again. What's going on?
I'll tell you a little
about that? How do
anecdote.
you feel about it?
Yeah, I'll tell you a little anecdote about that. In the late 60s, early 70s in New York at Carnegie Hall, no, it was at Lincoln Center. The New York Philharmonic was playing. Bernstein was conducting. It was a Shostakovich symphony. And as the work was played, the first movement ended, total quiet. The second movement ended, and one person applauded vociferously, just all by himself. It was Shostakovich. So for me, applause is a response that's meaningful, not obligatory. In fact, I've even said on some occasions, standing ovations are required to be cheering. I don't want a standing ovations perfunctory because we just like to do that. We don't want them to feel bad. We want it to be because it was that good, and if it's that good, cheer. Don't just applaud. So those are my thoughts on that. And just to add, it's however you feel. You know, I go to concerts and it's one of those where they don't applaud, and I applaud if it's good, and I'll even yell bravo out, you know, or bravi, because the whole point of music is to experience it and to have the emotional connection with what is being presented by the composer through the composer's advocate to the audience, and it needs to be real. It needs to be real. If you don't feel like applauding, please don't. Insincere applause is bleh. Pete?
Sitting against the wall. I will not.
I can be, I can stay,
You said
but
no
it's,
more questions.
yeah, I think we're at the, I'm reading in a room and I think it's a good time. It's just before 3 o'clock. And we have all of this stuff here. So I started out saying that I would tell you about this. This is Brahms. This is my dissertation. This is Symphony number 5, the Shostakovich. This is Beethoven 9, right here. This is Brahms' own handwriting. And this is the same page put into print. And I will conclude by reading something from my dissertation. You see, I'm passionate about the connection. Goethe's assertion, music begins where words end, defines the impossibility of sufficiently structuring a theoretical language that can allow us to verbalize the substance of music. This substance includes that which makes music meaningful, gives it its expressive power, makes it an exceptionally passionate means of communication, and helps distinguish great music from lesser works. And then I concluded, my dissertation is, it was a very difficult topic to try to tackle. My advisor told me I was crazy. He also ended up saying it was the best dissertation he'd ever seen. So that was nice. I concluded my preface by saying the desire to delve into such a difficult topic is due to my own personal need to articulate objectively the interpreter's inner responsiveness to form, musical time, and musical unity. This striving proceeds from my aspiration, to the extent I'm able, to re-experience the creative impulse behind the musical notation of a composition. What was in the composer's mind? Such an adherence of the original idea includes encountering the joy, passion, spiritual commitment of the composer, together with the expression of truth and beauty that underlines all great music and much of that which would be great. In this, the interpreter resonates with the timeless beauty and truth that has been captured in the composition, and then this, and experience as a virgin encounter the sense of absolute necessity of each aspect of the work in order to celebrate the inevitability of its essence. That's only great music. There's not a lot of music that fits that. That's what I want to do. Thank you so much. And I'm available to talk. Anybody wants to come up, and I think I'll leave that one up.